Hi, Carl.
Hi, Paul-san. Hi.
Hello, Dice.
Hey, Paul, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good, good.
で、大久保あれ大久保さん泉さん
So it's 8 o'clock, so can I start?
おう
Oh, you have some another request.
うん時間ですね
Okay, well, let's start. So can we start?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, thank you for joining us today. And my name is Erica, and also I'm Division A Club Growth Director. It's my honor to invite Paul as our lecturer today. If you're a friend of mine, you may know that I always said Paul is the best Toastmaster in the world. And I really expressed him, right? When I joined Severe Club, he always motivated everyone during our regular meeting and emails also. I learned a lot from him. It's not only English expression, but I'm sure that everything comes from his great leadership for sure. So, please welcome today's lecturer, Toastmaster Paul Malone, with a big hand.
Hello.
Yes,
There we
please.
go. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I have a question. Have you learned a lot about communications in Toastmasters? Yes. Have you learned a lot about communications problems in Toastmasters? And have you ever been the problem, the communications problem in your Toastmasters club? I know I have. A past division director once told me that Toastmasters is a playground for adults. And sometimes, sorry about that. Sometimes it can be a very dangerous playground. So problems are unavoidable. We are human. But the good thing is that we are communicators. That's what we're here for. That's why we joined this club, is to be better at communicating. So when we find ourselves in an unharmonious communication situation, this shouldn't be a cause of panic. It shouldn't be a cause of sleepless nights and pulling out our hair. This is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to practice all that we've read about and all that we've heard about and all that we've learned. And it's a chance for us to improve and reach harmonious communication. So tonight, I want to thank Toastmaster Erica Nakazato so much for that wonderful introduction. And it makes me very, very sad for our Shibuya days. I hope that someday we can be in the club again. And I think that this lecture series of workshops is a great idea. So thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight on harmonious communication. Okay, so what I would like to do today is to help you transform your communication skills and give you a change in mindset and also a few practical skills that you can use to approach situations in which you feel there is a communication conflict. And this will help you communicate better with fellow Toastmasters, with your colleagues, with friends, and with loved ones. We all want this, right? We all want to be better communicators. And so tonight, we are going to look at 3 basic areas: compassion, assertive communication, and resist the urge to jump to conclusions. So C-A-R, car. I'm going to give you the tools. I'm going to give you a car and let you drive yourself to better communication. Okay, this acronym CAR was a complete accident. I just noticed it. So please forgive that really a horrible analogy. But yes, compassion, assertive communication, and resist the urge to jump to conclusions. Okay, let's begin with compassion. In about 1996, I was in Tokyo looking for my very first apartment. And I walked into the real estate agency in Ikebukuro. And I heard the woman on the phone talking. And she said into the phone, yes, he's an English teacher. Yes, he's 26 years old. And yes, he's American. When she hung up, she looked at me very happy and she said, oh, she loves Americans and she's very, very eager to meet you. So she gives me the address. I get on the train, I go there, knock on the door. She answers the door with this big smile on her face that quickly fades as she looks me up and down. The smile was replaced with a different kind of smile, a knowing smile. It's a kind of smile that says, I know who you are. I know what you want, and you're not going to fool me. And I said, well, I'm here for the apartment. She said, what country are you from? The United States. What country are your parents from? They're from the United States too. And then the smile on her face got really big. She was playing this game that I had no desire to play. She said, what country are your parents from? I said, listen, you can ask me about my parents, and I'm going to tell you they're from America. Now, it wasn't technically a lie. They were from America. But, you know, around 1849, one day, my great-great-grandparents, they were Mexican. And because of the Mexican-American War, the very next day, they were the Americans from the United States. But she wasn't interested in that. She looked at me and she said, the apartment's not for rent. So as I was walking back to the station, I was still processing. I really wasn't quite sure how to feel about what had just happened. But when I got back to the real estate agency in Ikebukuro, I opened the door, I walked in, And all three women were bowing as I entered in a complete 90-degree bow, doing the Moshiwaki Aramasen Deshita. And that's when it hit me. This was bad. And I was devastated. I felt so unwelcome, and I felt so aware of looking different than other Americans. The very next day, I had a class in a big oil company. And it was a big meeting room. This was in the time when we had huge classes, like 12, 16 students per class. And we're sitting around this meeting room, all of these guys, no women, all in their white shirts and their black ties. And one of the guys looked at me. He could tell I was upset. And he said, "What's wrong?" And I told him the story. One of the guys looked at me and he said, "She didn't do anything wrong." Another guy said, "It's her apartment. She can rent to who she wants to." And a third said, "At least the women at the real estate agency want to help you. At least." Dr. Brene Brown says that those words, "at least," are the worst thing you can say to someone in pain. You know, my son died. Well, at least you have a daughter. So I want to ask you a question right now. The question is this: did those guys around the table with their white shirts and their black ties, did they show empathy? So go ahead if you can and just unmute your microphone and say yes or no. Did they show empathy?
No.
No.
No. No. No. Everybody no? Okay, any yeses? Okay, you're all wrong. Yes, they showed empathy. They showed a lot of empathy for the wrong person. They showed empathy for the woman who owned the apartment, not for the person who was sitting in front of them in pain. And, you know, empathy is great. Everybody, please practice empathy. Empathy is trying to imagine what the other person is feeling. You know, if you don't know exactly what they're feeling, then you imagine a similar situation and remember how you felt, and then say, "Ah, this must be what they're feeling." Empathy is great, but there's a danger to empathy. And that is that sometimes we empathize with people who are more similar to us than those who are different. So I guess many of you know that I go to Miki Suzuki's cafe very, very frequently. Toastmaster Miki Suzuki. And one day, one of the fellow customers, he's Japanese, he told a story about how a Canadian college student had stolen money from him. Now, I'm not Canadian, but I'm American, similar, and I've been a college student, I know. And so I started to defend this Canadian thief, to the point where everybody in Mickey's cafe were looking at me like I was a monster. And Mickey looked at me and was like, "What are you doing?" And I recognized I was doing the same thing those guys were. I was empathizing with the wrong person. So Paul Bloom suggests a better word: compassion. Compassion is seeing someone in need and wanting to help them, right? Now, some of you think this is just a word game. In English, we say it's just semantics. And maybe it is, but I think it's more of a change in mindset. It's more of a trick to remind us that when someone in our group is having a problem, that we are focused 100% on them. We can set aside everything else, focus on the person who is in pain, try to imagine their situation, want to help them. No matter what their differences are, our differences are, they are our focus. And so this is really something that has transformed my life. This realization that we can empathize with the wrong people. Now you can imagine the implications in Toastmasters. Maybe you have a foreign member. Maybe you have a Japanese member who is much, much older or much, much younger or from a very, very different background. There's many different cases in which we have members in our club who are just not like all the others. We've all experienced it. And in that case, we have to make a special effort to practice compassion. Okay. So this is our chance for our very, very first breakout section. I want you to discuss with each other some of these questions. If you have time for only one, that's great. Maybe you can turn it into a table topics activity, give people like 2 minutes to answer. But I want you to think, have you ever felt like a fish out of water? And have you ever felt misunderstood? And what can you do if you think someone is having trouble adjusting to your Toastmasters club? Okay, so in a minute, we'll send you to your breakout rooms and we'll give you 10 minutes to discuss. And then when we come back, I want to hear the highlights, the observations. So make sure that someone in your group has written down your notes. And maybe you want to take a screenshot very quickly so you remember what these questions are. If you would take a screenshot, that way you can discuss these questions more easily in your breakout session. Are there any questions?
It's
Okay, great. Let's go to our breakout session. This is always a time where I'm scared that it's not going to work. Sometimes it takes a long time. While we're waiting, do you have any questions about anything? Okay, good. So maybe we are one breakout session. How many people are here? Just Naito-san, Toastmaster Adachi, and Toastmaster Musashi?
I think there are 9 people right now.
There are 9 people. Yeah. Sometimes these breakout rooms don't work. So with the 9 of us here, let's try to make the most of it. Okay. Does anybody want to speak up? Does anybody want to answer the first question?
Okay, I will.
Go ahead.
Okay, this happened when I changed my job, and the first month or so, I didn't know about the company. I didn't know about the people, but the other people, they worked together. They went through very difficult times. They had teamwork, and they've gone out drinking. They know each other well, but I was a new guy, so I felt very much like an outsider. I didn't know what to talk about because I didn't know enough about the job or the company. So that's when I felt
Okay.
like a fish out of water.
Okay. And how well do you think that they showed empathy or compassion to you?
Well, I think they tried to explain what I need to do and how, and what my contribution, what they expect.
Okay.
Oh. But I
It was moved away to another.
Yes, sometimes it takes a long time for breakout sessions.
Really?
Yeah.
I did something wrong, I think.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so we lost Naito-sama. That was a great answer. Okay. Anybody else want to speak while we're waiting? Oh, here we go. Yeah, so sometimes it takes a long time for the breakout sessions.
What's happening here? Oh dear. Sorry, Paul. I did something wrong.
That's okay. That's okay. But everybody's in a room right now?
I hope so.
And how many minutes?
About 6 minutes, I think.
Hi. Okay, so we had a great discussion. I would like to hear a little recap from some people. Okay, is there a volunteer who wants to say what you talked about? Okay, Carl?
Well,
You made the first sound.
all right.
It's a difficult question.
So the discussion.
Is it?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
I hardly understand English. I joined the Japanese Toastmasters club.
Okay.
Paul-san, hi. I have
Okay.
many times to feeding the fish out of the water.
Okay.
For example, I have I feel every time I enter English Toastmasters club, I felt a lot of fish out of water because my poor English skills.
Right.
Because I have the difficulty in what I really wanted to do in my mind in English, and I felt very もどかしい
Good.
so, and a lot of
Right.
so this is the answer of your first question. So
Right. Right. And I like that. So you feel like a fish out of water when you are in an English meeting. Okay. So when there is a foreigner in a Japanese meeting, how do you help that person?
Oh, what is that? So, for example, I feel speak slowly and a little bit in using some word of English. So, and express
Right.
easy expressions like today's podcast.
Exactly. Right. So great. I think that's a great answer. So I have attended Japanese clubs and I have felt completely lost, right? And so I try to remember that experience. And when I see that there's a low-level English speaker in my English club, I think everything that Toastmaster Carl said is great. Speak more slowly, use gestures, use easier words. Okay, try to imagine what that person feels and adjust. Okay, so great. Anybody else from a different group?
Can I share?
Please,
Okay,
go ahead.
So, for example, if having someone trouble, especially for the first timers, right? So sometimes, as being the Toastmaster, we have to show that that person is very welcome.
Yes.
And of course, if he's being shy, let's talk to him. For example, we have to entertain him to feel relaxed, that person, that she is really a part of the club, even though he is the very first time in attending the club.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's so true. I don't know about you, but my first experience at Toastmasters was very lonely. Yeah. And so I tried to remember that. And when someone is new, you go up and talk to them, explain things. And at the after party is part of the meeting. You talk with them, you make them part of the group and make them feel welcome. Okay, nice. Thank you for that. That's really good advice. We have time for one more person. Does anybody else want to share what they talked about?
Can I speak a little bit?
Yes, please.
In our group, we are just talking about the digital divide between the young members and the elderly members. Because you know that due to the COVID situation now, we are supposed to do the online meeting, but unfortunately, some elderly members are not so much good at using this kind of the digital device. So some elderly people is now a little bit the difficult to join us. So this kind of difference is a problem. So they are just like the literally fish out of the water.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And yes, I include me in the older category. I can barely operate Zoom. It took me a very, very long time. And so, Toastmaster Kaga, what can you do to help them?
I'm not sure, but in our group, we just say, that maybe waiting is a good solution. I mean, that we just, ask them to improve their own techniques. We just hope.
Okay.
Just waiting.
Okay. Good. Does anybody else have a suggestion on what we can do to help people who don't know about technology?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, Naito-san.
Okay, recently I had get together with people same age as me, and this is like a Dosokai alumni meeting, and I said let's meet by Zoom, but many people have never used Zoom before. So what I did was actually I had like an instruction on how to connect to Zoom and how to use the gallery view and the speakers view. So I took screenshots with explanations and I sent it to them before we have this meeting. So rather than expect them to look up some website and learn by themselves, I try to help them as much as I can. So I think that's one way to help them.
Yes, and that's exactly what we did at Shibuya Toastmasters Club. The younger members did the screenshots and they made this beautiful step-by-step manual on how to log into Pathways and how to use Pathways. And it was very, very helpful. Okay, and I think that's a great topic to bring up, is that for many older people, technology it's a barrier. It's a block. And for you, it might not seem that way, but believe me, it is a huge block sometimes. And just remembering, we have to think about them and think about what it would be like to have to experience this new way of doing Toastmasters. Okay, great. And so, yeah, so I heard many great stories of being a fish out of water. And I just encourage you to use that feeling. And when you see someone in your club you feel is struggling, use compassion. Imagine what they're feeling and try to come up with a solution with them on how you can solve this. Okay, great. So that's compassion. And please wait as I struggle with technology here. Okay, good. Okay, great. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the A in car. And this is assertive. So, assertive. Pick of the day. So some people who know me know that for about 5 years, I put one new picture on Facebook every day. Usually things that I saw around Tokyo. And I don't know exactly the date, but one day I put this picture. And it was after a Tokyo Toastmasters meeting where this older Toastmaster came up to me and he said, "This is a terrible photo. It's just a terrible photo and all Japanese women hate you." Okay, and so I really didn't know how to process that. And so I asked him for some more information and he couldn't even get the words out. He said, it's just terrible. And all Japanese women hate you. He said it 2 times, right? And so, that night I went to dinner with all the Toastmasters and there were, Toastmaster Reiko and Toastmaster Takami and other women. And I wanted to ask them about it, but all Japanese women hate me. I didn't know what to do. So the next day I had a lesson with a student. Her name is Keiko, and she's also a friend. And so I showed her this photo and she said, "Oh, sugoi, kawaii. I love this photo." So by this time, I was in Japan for about 12 years. And I know there was something wrong with her tone. It was a little too exaggerated, a little too much. When I look back on this now, I realize that this was the first time that I was beginning to read the air. So I asked her again and I said, what, do you like this photo? And she was even more. She goes, oh, it's subarashi, it's great. I love this photo so much. And I knew something was wrong. And Keiko, are you my friend? Of course. I said, he told me this photo was terrible and that all Japanese women hate me. What do you think about this photo? She got a smile on her face, a kind smile. She leaned forward, her voice dropped, and she said, I want you to succeed in your photo project. I think it's great. But I'm going to tell you what I don't like about this photo. She said, first of all, I'm afraid that this woman doesn't want her photo taken. And she said, second, she was, people all over the world are going to see this. And I'm afraid they're going to have the wrong idea about how Japanese women dress. She said, I don't dress this way. I don't know anybody of my friends who dress this way. And so she said, I really think that you should take the photo down. So was I happy to hear this? Absolutely not. But was I grateful that she told me this? Yes, because I needed to hear that. And I needed to hear it in the very, very gentle way that Keiko told me. So there are high context cultures. I think many of you have heard of this before, right? Yeah, these are cultures where many of the people have very, very similar backgrounds, right? And so many things don't need to be said. Right? And also there are rules about, not being too harsh with criticism. And so in a high context culture, people really need to be indirect, right? And that's what Keiko was doing at first. Any Japanese person would have recognized that, oh, subarashi meant it wasn't good, right? But I think many people from foreign countries would not have recognized that. So in a high context culture, we have a problem here. Good. Communication is indirect, right? Messages are very, very subtle. And situational awareness is extremely important. This is reading the room. I come from a low context culture, the United States. Yeah, we're taught at a very early age in the United States to speak up, to get to the point, and to tell people exactly what we feel, right? In a low context culture, it's very direct. Low context culture's background is not so important. Start with your main point, and communication is very, very clear, explicit. It's very, very clear. Okay, and so here's some cultures, countries that we can look at. You can see that of the high context cultures, Japan is the most high context, right? Followed by many, many Asian societies and Russia. And that, the United States is, kind of toward the bottom, kind of toward low context, but not the most. The most low context, the most direct cultures are the Scandinavian countries, German and German Swiss. Okay, so it's important in Japan to read the air. As I said, that was the first time that I can remember where I successfully was able to read the air. You know, my student told me a story about how she went to lunch with her team and the team leader, and the team leader wanted soba, and she really didn't want soba. But she could tell that everybody else was wanting to choose soba because they thought the team leader wanted soba. And so she thought, okay, I have to choose soba too because everybody else seems like they're going this way. So she ate soba. Right. And the thing she told me was that, you know, reading the air is hard. Right? It's hard for Japanese people. And it's almost impossible for foreigners. And it's almost impossible for some Japanese people. Tepe Ikeda. Right? And so when we're dealing in a situation where we're dealing in a global context. So if we're talking about a club member that has a foreign member, then be aware of how direct and assertive you are being. So things that you think other people should know just because of the situation may not be so easy for other people to understand. So it's important to say what you mean. And one thing about assertiveness is that it's not aggressive, okay? It's just speaking up and giving opinions. It's saying no, asking for a change in behavior, and being diplomatic. Diplomatic means polite. Okay, when you simply say what you think, what you feel, what you want, this is being assertive. Now we have the situation with the older Toastmaster and Keiko. The older Toastmaster was very low context. All Japanese women hate you. And Keiko was being very high context. Oh, I love this. She was letting her intonation tell me that it was bad. Now, I got a question from Toastmaster Kaga about whether Japanese people can be assertive. And I thought that was very interesting because this old Toastmaster, he was Japanese. So in both cases, there was a Japanese person who was being low context and a Japanese person who was being very high context. So definitely Japanese people can be very direct and can be assertive. But there's a difference. The old Toastmaster was problem focused. He was so concerned about the photograph and about how terrible the photograph was and about the mistake that I had made. And so he came across as being aggressive. Keiko, on the other hand, she was concerned about me. She was very clear about what she didn't like about the photo, much clearer than the Toastmaster was, in a way that was brutally honest in a way. But she said it with clear compassion with me, trying to make sure that I was not destroyed by this. So because he was problem focused, it came across as aggressive, right? And Keiko came across as assertive. And I'll tell you that I hesitate to use this word aggressive with this Toastmaster because in the end, he gave me information I needed. Maybe not in the most graceful way, not in the most detailed way, but he did give me information that was helpful. And one thing that Toastmaster Miki Suzuki told me is she said that I need to be patient with Japanese people who are trying to be assertive. And I'm so glad she told me that because that was another thing that completely changed my mind, is that, you know, Whereas Japanese people may need practice on expressing their opinions more directly, people from the United States and from Western countries need to be more patient with Japanese people when they're trying to acquire this skill. I was angry at this man for many, many years, but I've let the anger go thanks to Toastmaster Miki Suzuki. But once again, if you are problem focused on what's wrong, then that can come across as not compassionate, overly assertive, aggressive. But if you're focused on the person, then you can practice compassion. Okay, assertive feedback. So this is a method you can use. You can state your intentions. Okay, I want you to succeed. I really want people to hear your speeches. Yeah, I want this to be a good experience for you. However, I have noticed that you tend to talk too much in meetings, right? Talk about the consequences. When this happens, it creates a bad atmosphere and people don't have the opportunity to talk and they feel kind of resentful to you. And so what I would really like is if maybe you can take a bigger role in the meeting and that will give you the opportunity to speak. I'll help you. I'll help you prepare for that. So I found this is a great way to approach people when you have to give them feedback. State the intentions, why you want to help them. Say what the problem is. Try to use I statements. Okay, I have noticed, I feel. Talk about the consequences to the group. State the positive outcome you would like to see and give them a way forward. Okay, good. And this is what that looks like as I've just said. I really want everyone to see what a great speaker you are. I've noticed something. When this happens, I feel, okay. What I would really like to see happen is, if you need help, I can help you. Okay, so this is how you be assertive and diplomatic. Okay, and repeat, this is what Keiko said. I want people to see your photographs. Oh, sorry. Oh, not good with Zoom. Okay, good. And I'm going to tell you what I don't like about this photo. And I'm afraid that I would appreciate. So yeah, I'm impressed that Keiko had this down perfectly. She said she's never taken communications training. It just came naturally to her to be so wonderful in giving feedback. Great. Okay, good. So let's talk about a communications plan in your club, how you can use what I just said. First of all, if a problem happens in the club, act immediately, right? I think what happens is, many times what I've seen is people will wait until there are 2 or 3 examples, maybe 4, and then they'll meet with the person and say, you talked too much in the last meeting, in the meeting last month, and twice in the month before. And so then, instead of talking about one particular problem, it becomes a full-on attack on the person. So if something happens, talk about it right away. And the officers will decide what is good for your club or what is not good for the club, right? If I think that a big one for me is table topics. If someone has the TMOE role and they're also an evaluator and they have another role, and then the table topics master says, are there any volunteers for this question? I mean, I'm always just stunned when someone with 3 roles raises their hand and goes to the front of the room. Okay, there should be a policy about that. If you have a major role in the meeting, you do not do table topics. Right? Okay, decide beforehand what is acceptable and what is not. There was a case recently about a man and a woman, a couple with a baby, about whether they should be allowed in the club or not. And I know that many clubs around Tokyo had this same problem. It was the same couple. and the officers put it to the members, and many of the members decided no. And that's what you have to go with, right? The officers to decide what club policy is. And in some cases, the members will vote on it. So use that as your guide. Select an ambassador. If you have someone who you feel is not fitting in, is not contributing, is too quiet, is for some reason just not living up to expectations, have someone go and talk to them and approach them with the intentions and the problem, which is person focused on down. Okay, approach the situation with compassion. I've said that so many times tonight. It's so important. Talk to the person, not the problem. Okay, and be flexible. Okay, maybe you can change. Maybe the club can change. Who knows? But make it an open dialogue. Are there any questions on this?
Perfectly presented.
Okay, great. Okay, good. Okay, good. So did everybody get a question? Sorry, a screenshot of, let me see if I can get it, this page. Sorry, went way far back. Okay, did everybody get a screenshot of this? I should have asked you beforehand. Get a screenshot if you can. Okay. And also, if you can, get a screenshot of this page. Okay, great. Now we are going into our second breakout session. Okay, if you want a screenshot of this, this is also a good one. Okay, and here we go. Okay, for the role play here, a member is always interrupting to remind people of the correct way of conducting a meeting. Okay, we've all seen these members. No, we can't do it this. First, we have to do that. Okay, once again, your club decides how you do things. There is no one right way of doing Toastmasters. And the second is, a member is always unprepared for the roles they take, causing confusions in the meeting. Okay, what I would like for you to do is to, in the breakout session, one person is the person who is causing the problem, the other person is the communications ambassador, and practice using that assertive feedback method to try to come to a solution. Okay, great. Do you have any questions? Okay, great. So Erica, can you put us into breakout rooms?
Why is it a raccoon? Does it mean anything? Role play?
Raccoons kind of cause problems. They're mischievous.
I see.
I thought it was appropriate. Okay, and hopefully we'll get put into our rooms Okay. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so in our group, we had a very interesting result. We'll save that for later. Does anybody want to talk about what happened in their group? Okay. Toastmaster Chizuru, do you want to say what happened in your group?
Thank you for asking me. In our group, two other people and I are talking about that question, but
Technical difficulty. Okay, good. Okay, and was anybody else in her group? Who else was in Toastmaster Chizuru's group?
Did you raise your hand? Did you raise your hand? Daisuke Kono-san? Did you raise your hand?
I did, but I think Paul was asking if anyone else was in Chizuru's group to pick it up from where she left off. Who else was in Chizuru's group? There must have been two others.
Yeah.
Unless they're both.
Oh,
okay.
Well, she's
Oh,
back.
There you
She's
go. There you
back.
go. Yeah.
how about please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do you want to continue or?
Toastmaster Chizuru, can you continue? What happened?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In our group, nobody interrupt your meeting so happily. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so did the communications ambassador say what the problem was? Okay, because what happened in, well, Toastmaster Adachi, tell everybody what happened in our group.
Okay, in our group, Toastmaster Naito played a great role of interrupter, and I was the communication ambassador, but I tried to too politely, and my suggestion is too indirect. So Toastmaster Naito just tried to justify his action and didn't try to improve or change his opinion. So I'm not successfully, I couldn't successfully change his attitude. And nice. Paul suggests that I should politely point out the exact problem, one example, and how to change his way of action.
Right.
So
Okay,
that's
so
the point I learned.
Very good. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So it was Toastmaster Adachi was very, very high context and very polite and indirect, and she never said what the problem was. Right. And so I thought that was very interesting. Okay, Dice, Toastmaster Dice, do you have a comment?
Sure. Okay, in our group, actually, we didn't do the role play. We ran right into the discussion because at the onset, I think most of us agreed that the message needed to be conveyed one way or another. And we had Toastmaster Kaga, who told us that he's from a low context French environment where people have to slug it out. One thing that we said is, although we do have to get the message across, it really, what's important is how we do that. And you can always find a positive in an intention. So if that person that's always interrupting, you could say that he has a good intention, unless he's really there to just wreck the meeting. So first point out that, thank you for trying to make the meeting more effective. I know that you're experienced and you want to help people learn. But it would really help the novices if you can let them make their mistakes, and then why don't we set aside some time and help them improve or something like that, instead of saying, hey,
that's fabulous.
Shut up, right? So that was kind of our conclusion.
Okay. Yes, I love that. There's look for the positive intention in whatever behavior they have, right? And highlight that. So thank you for wanting to make our meeting better, right? In our role play, it was we wanted to make a good impression on guests and other Toastmasters clubs. So thank you so much for trying to make our club impressive to our guests. Okay, fantastic. Good. Does anybody else have a comment about what happened in the role play?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so Toastmaster Cheng from Sendai, she said that she's teaching one of the universities in Sendai. So she has a lot of problem. Actually, 4 of us, they are not prepared doing the role play. So I suggested to make just comment or suggestion if what they understand about the 2 problems. So Toastmasters said that she's in trouble because she is teaching in English. She cannot speak Japanese. So sometimes because the culture is different, right? So what I did, so I shared my idea, for example, about the interruption and the causing problem. If we have enough time, for example, we can give suggestions to the fellow Toastmasters. But if the meeting is ongoing now, if someone made an interruption, we can help her right away. For example, if her role is a timer and she's in confusion, she didn't prepare much. If you're sitting beside her, you can give directly help so that it will not cause any interruption during the meeting.
Right. Okay,
and then
that's
later,
really
after
good.
the meeting, and then after the meeting, if someone made, for example, interruption, you cannot do right away, hey, you're not right, you're not good, because everybody, all the members will do interruption. And then later, after the meeting, you can speak to her by not offending, by, for example, you can talk in a different place and try to approach her. Can I give a suggestion? You did like this because just in a very, very manner way, in a very, very compassionate way.
Exactly, that's it. And compassionate thinking about the person. Right, I like that. So help them out during the meeting and then later take them aside and ask them if they need help or ask them what the problem is. So I like that. And that is focusing on the person, not focusing on the problem. Right? Always focus on the problem, on the person, and find the good intentions in what they do. I really like that. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Wow, time flies. I'm absolutely astounded by the time. And so I just want to cover something very, very briefly. Okay, hold on one moment. My poor Zoom skills are on display once again. Okay, and this is the last thing I wanted to talk about tonight, which is resisting conclusions. Okay, yeah, so yeah, I know that many times, I mean, maybe I look very friendly right now, but a lot of times my face is very, very hard, and people automatically assume that I'm not a nice person. And I've had many, many troubles with this. I've tried recently to try to smile more, but it also happens in other situations. Yeah, so I had a situation where I got a phone call from a colleague, and he said, "Go to Zoom now." And instantly I felt, oh my God, there's a problem. And I started to feel the adrenaline running through my body. And then he got on the Zoom call and he said, "You're doing the lessons wrong. You're filling out the agenda wrong. And basically you need to change your approach." I started to feel really bad. Yeah. And then I started to think, you know what? I'm new here. He's saying these things to me because he's jealous. He's jealous that I'm going to start taking all the students away, that I'm going to get better evaluations than him, and I'm going to take his job. I started bringing in all kinds of assumptions and thoughts and all different kinds of things. And I came to the conclusion that he really was jealous of me, that, you know, I was a threat to him. But the thing is, I asked myself, is this really true? I had no proof of anything that I was saying. And so I asked him, I said, you know, you sounded a little bit harsh on the phone yesterday. And he said, oh, I didn't mean anything by it. He said, you know, I just don't want you to get in trouble. He said, I got in trouble for the same thing when I first started. And he said, the reason I sounded that way is because I had class in like 2 minutes and I was in a rush. And so everything I thought, everything was just making shit up. It was completely untrue. And so this happens so many times. When we first feel that trigger, that emotional response, we start to pull in our thoughts, and then we start to create stories. Stop yourself when that happens. And then go to that person and use the same thing. You know, I've noticed something. You were very, very harsh. I feel that you were a bit condescending on the phone. Are we all right? And then have that conversation. Okay. Unfortunately, that's a very, very quick run through on that. Do you have any questions on that?
I've noticed something that I don't want to talk to you about.
Yeah, okay. Or something happened. I want to talk to you about this. Okay, basically, go to that person and ask them, are you angry? Did I do something wrong? I don't appreciate the tone of voice that you used. Okay, being that kind of assertive is hard. It's very hard, but in many cases, you'll understand it's really worth it. Okay, great. So we have 10 minutes left. Let's do some Q&A. Do you have any questions about anything?
Can I ask a very practical question?
Sure.
Okay, so I have been troubled by this kind of division in the club. That is from it's a group of members who hate pathway, and then they're not shy. They don't hide their dislike. So when new members, the guests come, they just dislike it. but that create a very difficult situation for officers to bring in new people and then to take them in. So I was hoping, can we use the training today? Like, is it a better way to make the situation better?
Well, yes. So I read the questions as they were coming in on the spreadsheet. And when I encountered your question, I was like, she's speaking directly to me. I'm one of those older members who does not like pathways. And yeah, I think basically you have to sit down and talk with them and say what you just said to me about the impact that it is having on new members and having on other members in the club, and telling them that you really would like for them to make the effort to join Pathways or start to do the Pathways program. Now, if you notice what Toastmasters did is they gave everybody a time limit. You complete the paper-based manuals by this date because they're all going away. After this date, you have no choice. In your clubs, as I said, in your club communication plan, you decide what the rules in your clubs are. You can say, we have decided that everybody is going to do a Pathways project. If it's not a Pathways project, then we don't want you to present in the club. So you can make it an ultimatum for them, whether to join the club or not. But the thing is, you approach them very diplomatically and say, hey, listen, I've noticed. This is the problem. This is the effect. This is what we'd really like for you to do. So this is something that I think does need to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed very directly. Does that answer your question, or do you have any other comment on that?
So if that make the 50% of the member eventually leave the club, that is okay. You know, having struggle. I think
is it that many in your club?
It's a very old club.
Okay. So there are many in that club.
Okay.
Then probably not do the ultimatum as strong, but I think it's a continual process of trying to persuade people to do this. If you know, so find the people that you can persuade, because everybody's at a different level on this, right? Find the one or two people you can persuade, get them on your side, and then use those people to keep going down the line. So persuade the persuadable. If someone right now is very far away, anti-pathways, leave them be for the moment. Go for the people you can actually get. And when you have the majority, then you have the power of numbers. So step by step on this.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, can I have some suggestions?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, since the Pathways project just started last year, right? Mm-hmm. So we cannot blame the pioneer members of each club, because we've been doing the competence, you know, the manual, the competent, the leadership manual. So they've been doing that for so long. They've been doing that for so long. So we cannot blame them that maybe it really, they don't like it, but they are having confusion, because Pathways, a lot of it works, you know. For each topic, you have to complete, like, for example, 5 different levels, and some there are 3, 4 like that. So it's too hard for them, because from time to time they have to change the topic. Many variations. So we try to understand them, or maybe you have to cooperate with each other, or trying to ask somebody who is good in doing the Pathways. Oh, how did you do that? Oh, can you help me do that? Maybe approaching that person, so that maybe the confusion of those members that who really want to do the Pathway, maybe little by little, you can convince them to do them later.
Okay, very good. And that would be like having the communication ambassador, Have someone who's very good with pathways, talk with them on a regular basis to persuade them. Okay. And yeah, I am 100% in the anti-pathways mode. And my clubs are letting me off the hook. They are letting me get by without doing pathways. And I wish they wouldn't. So I need to talk with them about assigning me some kind of a mentor and to easing me into this system. Okay, that's a great question though. Yeah, so I think definitely my approach was a little bit harsher because I'm thinking about me, myself, and what I want someone to do to me. But you're right, understanding the difficulty, assigning someone who is good with pathways, and step by step bringing them down the line. Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay, Adachi-san.
Yes. Could you explain more about talk to the person, not the problem, this part? Could you explain more?
Okay, great. Yeah, so I guess a lot of times, so for example, if someone is doing the same behavior again and again, say that they are always speaking up and interrupting other people. Many times what happens is we don't address it right away. We see it happen. In the next meeting, it happens again. It happens again the next time. And soon you have like about 5, 8, 10 examples of when this person has interrupted other people. And so what you are thinking about only is interruption. He interrupts all the time. So when you go to him and you focus only on the problem and say, you are an interrupter. You are a person who disrupts. You did this in this meeting and that in that meeting and that in that meeting. All you're doing is bringing the problem to that person. You're focusing 100% on the problem. But if you want to get a different result, think about how the person feels. Yeah, and I really loved what Toastmaster Dice said tonight. Try to find the positive intention in what they're trying to do. And say, you know, I really want you to succeed in this club. And, you know, you interrupt people because you really want to make everybody a better speaker. And you have so much passion for this club. And I appreciate it so much. However, and then say what the problem is. So in that case, you're focusing on the person. You're making sure that you're being compassionate. And you're making sure that that person feels like they are a welcome part of the club still. So that is focus on the person, not the problem. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand well.
Have a additional?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. One of my speeches that I have done at the Pusai Speakers Club, one of my title is that don't focus on the problem. Don't let the problem control you, but you have to control the problem. So
that's a very well, yeah.
So what I can say to this is, if just like Toastmaster Malone said, that we have to listen about what is her feeling, her idea. We have to let, by using our empathy, what was really disturbing her that way. So that, because if we are going to focus on the problem, we cannot solve anything. We have to focus the person, what kind of help that person really needs, so that we can solve or we can give any solution to help her solve the problem.
Exactly. Perfectly said. Yes. Yes. And in that way, you keep the member. You keep the member and their overall positive benefit to the club. Right. Okay. Any other questions?
Toastmaster Toshia, it seems that he raised his hand.
Okay. Do you have a question?
No, nothing.
No. Okay.
It's difficult to do. It's difficult
Okay.
to understand the mission.
Okay. Yeah, so I had some other interesting questions on the spreadsheet. I will try to answer them on the Facebook page. There was one interesting question about how do I not feel guilty about not liking someone? We're not going to like everybody. There are going to be people that you don't like, that you don't get along with. But, you know, it's a challenge. If you're in this group and you have a common goal of becoming better public speakers, of making your club successful, of growing and contributing to Toastmasters, focus on that. Focus on what you have in common and try to work together. And if you just don't like them, you just don't like them. Hopefully it'll change as you open up and get to know them. And hopefully you're not going to let that influence you in any way, as long as they are contributing to the club, you know, being a good member and being a good speaker. Trying to use that focus on the positive, I think, can help. But remember, some takeaways for tonight is to always approach problems with compassion and be assertive. I mean, it's great to be polite, but say what the problem is when the problem needs to be said. State your intentions. I want you to succeed. Focus on the person, not the problem. Resist jumping to conclusions and be flexible. And I think with this, that you can have a successful communications plan. Thank you so much. I really, really, really appreciate this opportunity today. And yeah, if you have any questions, just please send me an email at this address, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. So thank you, and Toastmaster Erica, back to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. I'm really not good at read the air, so I learn a lot. And also, the compassion is quite famous word in the Bible, but I'm not sure about the meaning. But today I learned a true meaning of compassion. I really appreciate it, and you are so super, super, super. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Master Paul. And would you mind if I take pictures? Anyone? Can I? And would you mind if I upload to the Facebook and Tomato, please? Yep. Just say cheese.
Cheese.
Cheese. Okay, thank you very much. Perfect. And thank you again. Thank the Toastmaster Paul. Thank you so much indeed for your super session. So please give him a big, big hand.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you, guys. Great
Awesome.
participation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I
so
am
much.
really impressed
And,
with your
yeah, and
this
also I really hope that you enjoy this session as well. And finally, I'd like to send you a survey regarding this session in a couple of days. So I really appreciate it if you kindly reply it. And again, thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great weekend. Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you,
Paul.
Erika.
Thank you.